Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Pretty Powerful Podcast. My name is Angela Gennari, and I am here with Gillian McIver. Hi, Gillian.
Hi, so nice to be here.
So nice to have you. So Gillian McIver is the founder of Rain Wellness, a brand committed to delivering high-quality, sustainable, effective menstrual products that embody a meaningful purpose. Gillian grew up in a small town, Ontario, Canada, with an amazing supportive family with 2 brothers, 1 sister, and the best parents. She competed internationally in freestyle skiing until the age of 19 and credits competing at high levels for teaching her the value of commitment, determination, and learning from mistakes, essential in entrepreneurship for sure. So you launched Rain Wellness less than a year ago. And can you tell me about what made you come into the idea that you want to start a wellness company?
I've been working on this company since 2021,
Okay.
but we just launched into market a year ago. So it feels new
Nice.
still, even though it also simultaneously feels like it's been a long journey.
Right? I understand.
As
I
any
always
entrepreneur
say
will know.
entrepreneur years are like dog years.
Yeah, it just seemed it's exciting and it's fast, but it's also slow.
Yep.
But I'll say the root of kind of Rain Wellness and why I wanted to start it came from, I call it kind of a full body and mind health and wellness reset that I did in 2020. In February of 2020, I started my MBA at Ivy Business School here in Canada. And, we started 2 weeks before COVID and we didn't know COVID was happening, obviously. And then everything went into lockdown. And I've always been a very active person, but those first kind of 6 to 7 months of COVID, coupled with school, I definitely let my health and wellness take a back seat. And I was, consuming lots of things and just not using kind of my health and wellness as a priority anymore. And so in October of that year, it sounds so cheesy, but I literally stripped down into a bathing suit and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, something needs to change. Like, I'm not happy with where I am and how I feel mentally and physically. And so the next day I, purchased a workout program at my house and I got a bunch of healthy food and I really started this rigorous routine. And it gave me kind of the foundation to look at what I was consuming across my whole life. So whether that was, media, personal care products, food, all of that. And from that, I kind of went down a rabbit hole of period products. And I'm a person with a very regular period. And so I use a lot of period products monthly. And I was buying whatever conventional product off the shelf and started reading more about it and what can be in conventional tampons that aren't certified organic. And I thought, it's hard to find these products, at least in Canada, on the shelf. So let's solve that problem. So I launched Rain Wellness with really a retail focused approach. And that's been my goal from the beginning, is making these period products accessible wherever anybody with a period does their everyday shopping.
Nice. So retail is a very competitive space, isn't it? So how hard is it to get shelf space?
It is a world that I knew nothing about. And maybe ignorance is bliss in this point, because I don't know if I would have taken a retail first strategy if I'd known how intricate it all is, and how many layers there is to get into retail. But I've been lucky, I'll say. And so there's a pharmacy chain here in Canada, which I won't say the name because it's not official yet, but we're supposed to launch into quite a few stores in a couple months. And right before this, I came off of a pricing call and everybody wants bigger margins.
Really?
And at least, and I've learned very quickly that to get into retail, it's really hard to just sell direct to a large retailer. There needs to be a distributor involved because, CVS or whatever, they don't want to hold 1 million accounts with every product in their store, they want to hold 500 accounts and have a distributor provide those. And so,
Yeah.
you know, the distributor needs their margins, which is fair. They're doing a lot of work for me. The retailer needs their margins. I need to cover my costs and hopefully make a little bit of money at the end of the
Yeah.
day. There's shelving fees, you know, I have 4 SKUs. Every SKU typically comes with a pretty hefty shelving fee.
Mm.
So it's kind of the Wild West, and the financial health of the company can fall away very quickly, or it can be very successful. It just takes a really locked in strategy, and that I have found is really all about relationships and who I enter a distributor relation with and stuff. But yeah, it's been something I never expected. And again, I think ignorance is bliss in that
Yeah,
standpoint.
I know. I feel the same way about my industry too. I didn't know what I didn't know, and that is probably what allowed me to do what I did because, it's one of those things where nobody told me I couldn't, so I just did. And so, yeah, ignorance can be very bliss when you're starting a business and you're trying to take chances on yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because if you overthink it and you listen to all the feedback from people saying, nope, can't be done, no, you can't do it, they're telling you their limitations, not yours. So,
Absolutely. And I found that at the beginning of starting this business, like my product line is considered by both the FDA and our organization called Health Canada, they're considered
uh-huh.
medical devices because they go in your body. And so they have
Oh,
to be
interesting.
approved by Health Canada and FDA. And before I'd even started the Health Canada licensing process, anybody I spoke to was like, you can't do it alone. There's no way. You need to
Mm,
hire consultants, you need to hire a lawyer. And so I did those things without even trying because I had essentially been scared into thinking I couldn't do it alone. And so I paid some consultants and I wasn't really happy with the work and I didn't get anywhere. So I eventually just did it myself, and
yeah,
it wasn't easy. It was kind of a head banging against the wall experience, but I also did it at the end of the day. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in people being like, well, no, you can't do that. Like, that's
right.
crazy. You can't deal with this government organization on your own. And you can do a lot more than you think you can. It takes maybe a little bit more time.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, good for you. Good for you for doing it
Thank you.
and going after it. So, why not the e-commerce channel, or did you consider it and you just decided to do retail instead?
I've looked at both.
Hmm.
It's funny, it was like 2022, I think, and I was kind of looking at my business plan and the projected financials, and I didn't even have product in Canada yet. I wasn't selling.
Yeah.
But I just kind of had this light bulb moment, so to speak, of like it just makes more sense to be on retail because at least here in Canada, shipping is quite expensive. And so
Oh,
a tampon is a product that when you need one, you typically need one pretty
now.
quickly.
Right.
Yeah, now. Yeah. Some
Yeah.
people plan ahead, some people don't.
I don't.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
usually
usually.
on a
I mean,
trip and I'm like,
yeah,
damn it.
the amount of people that say that is
Hmm.
amazing.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was kind of, I looked at it and I was like, how can we get this into more hands more quickly and for a cheaper price? Because if I started adding up, so a consumer buys it for $9.99 from my website, I put it in a
Sure.
box, I ship it to them with Canada Post. It's like $20, and that
Wow.
doesn't feel accessible to people who want access to clean period products. And so that option exists. You can buy it through my website, you can buy it through
Hmm.
e-commerce wellness platforms in Canada, which I love because it lets people shop how they want to shop. But I really wanted a retail first strategy because you're already buying,
Hmm.
something else at the grocery store and you're like, oh yeah, I also need this, and you grab
Yeah.
it, and it's not going to cost you $20.
That's good. Yeah, that makes total sense. So, have you thought about setting up distribution outside of Canada?
Yes, I have my sights set on the US.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm just actually working with a logistics company now who's based in the
Mhm.
US, who's amazing. And they're, when I'm ready, going to help facilitate that process. My products are FDA licensed already. I need my own FDA, I think they call it like an establishment license,
Okay.
which comes at a hefty cost, and it only renews
Mhm.
every October. And so we're quickly approaching October.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, I'm running the business case as to if I should purchase it this October or wait a little bit. But absolutely, the US market is big. It's amazing. There's such cool retailers that I'd love to get into. And I think my brand story and the product itself could do well there. So that's my next goal.
I love it. Very cool. All right. Yeah, I imagine that anything on the healthcare side is going to be a challenge, just because there's so much more regulatory, you know, jargon and things that you have to know. And has that just been a huge learning curve for you?
Yeah, that year that I was working on those Health Canada licenses, and I feel like every week I was like, oh, okay, yeah, here's another layer to it.
Yep,
And
yep.
even though the how it works, I private label from our manufacturer. And so the manufacturer was already Health Canada license. The
Oh, good.
products themselves are Health Canada license. As I white label under my own brand, I needed my own license as well. So they're licensed at multiple levels.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, and it felt like a very archaic process, I will say, trying to
Mhm.
go through it, how they accept applications, how they communicate. It's not streamlined in any way. And it's interesting, at least when I hear our government, saying that they really are here to help entrepreneurs, which I do
Right.
believe to an
Yes.
extent, but there's also all of these roadblocks, which I think people who haven't gone through it don't even know exist. And so it's our job of, I think, people who've gone through it with brands to be like, hey, this could be way better. Let's make it better,
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, I cried a lot that year. I will say I was so
Mhm.
frustrated a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, and I own a security company, and last year we made this decision to expand into several states, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into because security is one of the many really cumbersome processes in the U.S. where it's state governed, not federal governed. So from state
Oh.
to state, the laws are completely different. I mean, like
Oh.
so much so that I have to have somebody in that state managing compliance for that state. And so I have to hire somebody full time, and that's their job. You manage compliance and everything that you're doing. And so it's so cumbersome. So it really has to make sense, even just to expand state to state in the US when you're doing something that involves licensing or certifications or anything like that. So I totally get it. They think the United States is so easy to do business because we're all one country, except that there are different things where the states govern it, not the federal. Oh, it's
And you never know
awesome.
that until you go through it, right? Like no one would
Exactly.
think that securities is something that changes state to
Hmm.
state. It's just not
Exactly.
intuitive.
Exactly. And so, in some states they have to take a certain amount of training, and then that exact same training won't work for another state. And so like it's just it's something else, I tell you what. But but yes, nobody knows until you go through it how much
Exactly.
regulatory things, especially those states where they're like, "Oh yeah, we really are, we're pro small business." Like, "No, you are not." Like, I have done it. I have done it, and it is so hard. Then you have other states that don't consider themselves, like they call themselves the Commonwealth, right? Like Virginia. Oh, the Commonwealth of Virginia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And you just have all these other ridiculous laws that because they see themselves as something different than a regular old state, they want to
It's
have different
wild. And it's like,
rules.
why can't everybody kind of, join forces? And again, it's all about efficiencies. Why can't we just do it
Hmm.
together and maybe make the
Yes.
process a little bit easier?
Yeah, let's be really true pro small business. And even to the extent where I've actually talked to different politicians like during 2020, because 2020 was just it was a year where I felt like all I did was bang my head against a brick wall. It was like two steps forward, seven steps back, We can
Yeah.
release, we can open up events. Oh, but wait, there's this regulation and this regulation and this regulation, and then we have this, and then you can't do that, and then we might cancel at the last minute and you can't charge us, and you can't require that your employees show up if they call you and they say they have a fever. So I'm like, so they can just not show up for work, and oh, I had a fever that day. It's like, oh, it was so much. But yeah, 2020 I had reached out to a couple of politicians, and even then I'm like, hey, I want to join your small business committee who's making these damn decisions for the 20, all these regulations. I want to be on that committee. Like, I need sensibility here. And they're like, oh, but the committee is full of like, accountants and attorneys and people who are not small businesses, who are making decisions on behalf of small businesses, who again are nothing but politicians who are as far from small business as you can get. But anyway, that was my
It's
venting.
the definition of like a hair pulling experience. You
Yes,
just want to be
yes.
like, why is this happening?
None of this makes sense. None of
No,
it.
exactly.
So, yeah, I agree. We should only allow committees of people who actually have been there and done that, and
That would be
none of
great.
the other things can be involved with it. Yeah, so I agree. So when you start going into this, how long did it take you from concept to getting on shelves?
3.5 years.
Wow.
I guess
Yeah.
2.5. Sorry. My apologies. My math isn't great. 2.5. So
Yeah.
yeah, I started the first iteration of the company in April of 2021. That's when I like officially incorporated.
Yeah.
Also at that point, it was essentially going to be a completely different company. And as I kind of honed in on a strategy, this is what was born from that. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
But that was April 2021. And and
Wow.
then I think the manufacturer wasn't licensed with Health Canada until January of 2022. Then I began my
Mhm.
licensing, which took me to December of 2022. And then I ordered product. And then it takes 4 months to get here. And all of a
Wow.
sudden, we were in September of 2023. And I finally had pallets delivered. And like that was a whole dumpster fire experience of
Yeah.
itself trying to get those pallets delivered, and it's like a very memorable story which I will take with me forever. But
Mhm.
all of a sudden it was like, okay, we're in business, but now I
Yeah.
also need to sell it. And
Right,
so I
right.
was really lucky. I had a few local independent health and wellness stores who were immediately like, yes, we'll take it, and they've been so supportive, which is, it means the world to get your first retailer. It's like I'll never forget that email of the first retailer saying yes, and I like cried, and I was just like, it
Oh,
feels
that's
like everything's
amazing.
real. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a full 2.5 years to get onto a shelf from concept to now.
Unbelievable. Wow. So when you got your first retailers, those were ones that I assume you went direct to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I just signed a distributor about a month ago. And so we're just now in the midst of doing our first deal together, which is with a major retailer. And that's what spurred the need to get a distributor. I met
Mhm.
with the retailer independently way back in March, and they were
Nice.
like, yeah, we love it. We'll take it on, but you need a distributor. And then I wanted to find the right partner. And so I took quite a few months to do that because, I wanted a partner that I could see long-term growth with and long-term
Mhm.
strategy in the distribution space. And so we just signed the contract in August. And so now we're doing that first deal together, which is exciting. But until till now, I've been approaching stores on my own and literally like door knocking or walking in and being like, oh, I think my product can be a great fit here.
That's
And the
amazing.
feedback is, yeah, I don't always get yeses, of course, but the
Mhm.
stores that take it, they're really excited and they love to tell the brand story and publish that on social media and stuff, which any little bit helps.
That's really cool. So tell me what the process is like when getting a distributor. Like, is this somebody that you're vetting them and they're vetting you at the same time, I assume, right? Because I'm assuming they don't want brands or products that they can't really sell.
Absolutely. It's kind of like you're both contestants on The Bachelor. So
Okay.
you both hold a lot of power and you're both kind
Right.
of like, let's doing a song and dance together in a way. But there's lots of distributors in Canada and the US. There'd be
Uh-huh.
even more. There's also brokers. So some distributors do just distribution. They warehouse and they ship when they get a purchase order.
Okay.
My distributor also has a broker angle. So they have salespeople
Mm,
going into stores and selling your product. And so that's really helpful because it's kind of a two-in-one thing. But I probably had 6 to 7 meetings with different distributors from April till June. And then I started talking with my distributor now, and that was the end of my search. But it's a really interesting process. I think, particularly in retail,
hmm.
a lot of people who want a piece of the pie will sell you the moon in your initial conversations. And it's hard to know how much of that will come to fruition. So
Yeah.
part of it is a gut check, being like, these people seem really committed genuinely, and I think they'll actually get out there and sell my product.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and what I kind of held as a frame of reference was there's huge distributors with a huge portfolio of products, which down the road, maybe that will be an amazing fit. I'm still a really new brand and I'm not going to make them a ton of money at the beginning. And so I went with a smaller distributor who I wouldn't get lost in the shuffle of 500 other brands, right? They have a
Yeah.
few, they're giving me a lot of attention. And I love that because I need that right now. I need sales agents like excited about it. And so it's kind of that balancing act of who do you think is going to work really hard for you? Who do you trust? Who do you think is going to sell your product? There's so many different decisions that went into it.
That's so true because you're right. You need somebody you can trust, right? Like you're turning over basically the kind of the marketing or do they do marketing for you as well, or how does that work?
Yeah, so they'll help construct like in-store marketing initiatives and stuff. So, you
Mm.
walk into a CVS, for example, and you'll see some shelf danglers or like, a 2-for-1 special and stuff. And so they manage all of that, which is really
Okay.
nice. They'll help put me into like the store flyer and stuff. So they do a lot of marketing efforts. They warehouse, they ship the product to the retailer, and they again they do sales on my behalf as well. So I'm really like, here's my
Mhm.
company, please take care of it.
Yes, yeah, I love it. Okay. So yeah, finding the right distribution partner seems like it's key. So how does that work? Do they help you with like designing your packaging or anything, or that's all on you?
That's been all on me, and a lot of that has to do with the packaging itself has to be
Hmm.
Health Canada approved. And so
Oh,
there's
okay.
certain things that like have to go on each package to be Health
Okay.
Canada approved. So that includes where the manufacturing is, a toxic shock warning, which has to go on every
Hmm.
period product or every tampon, I should say. The certifications have to be approved by Health
Mm,
Canada. So, and also by every certification body. And so I had to get the packaging approved by 6 different governing bodies before I could
wow.
even order product. And so I did that back in, again, it was like 2022 or 2023, and got that approval. So I designed the packaging. I had an amazing individual named Sarah, who she does marketing and brand design. And so she designed the packaging. And it's like, people walk by my booth at a trade show and they are just like, what? It's so beautiful. And
That's
that was the
awesome.
intent. Yeah. And
That's
so I
really
really
cool.
wanted packaging that looked amazing. And I took that on my own, and then obviously onboarded a professional to do it. And I couldn't be happier with it.
Very cool. So I don't know if you ever follow any other entrepreneurs, but I'm a big entrepreneur nerd. Like I like to follow other entrepreneurs. So Sarah Blakely, are you familiar with her, the CEO
Of
of
course, the
Spanx, right?
queen.
So right, yeah,
Yes.
like she's like the queen of like the women-owned billionaire businesses.
I love
And
it.
I love her story about how she was getting all of her products shipped to her house, and there's just pictures of her in her living room packaging things up and like making it all happen. So is it similar when you just get 2 pallets or a couple pallets dropped on you of tampons? You're like, great, this is going to
Yeah.
be, like, how does this work? So are you then taking them yourself to these stores, especially the first ones where it's a, it's a smaller shop? Are you just taking them yourself in the trunk of your car? Like, here you go.
Literally, yes,
Yes.
literally. And
I
yeah,
love
it's
it.
that exactly. And when I fulfill orders through my website right now, or I
Hmm.
get a purchase order from one of my current retailers, I package them up on my kitchen table over there. I print out the
Yes.
packaging labels. I take them to the post office. I have 1 pallet of product in my basement, and then a very good friend of mine offered to keep the other 3 pallets in their basement for me because I don't have room. And so
Hmm.
those will get moved once I get a purchase order, and those will get offloaded to the distributor. But for right now and for the last year, it's like the most grown
I love
organization
it.
possible. And
Those are the
that
best.
it's amazing. And I think as I do this, I can only think of, one day I'll look back on this. And I hope that's true. I hope
Yeah,
it is
sure.
obviously such a success that I look back to when I was taping things at midnight closed on
Yeah.
my kitchen table. But even like, I said the first order of the pallets was a bit of a dumpster fire. And I was so excited. I knew the date they were getting dropped off. It was like September 22nd. And I was
Yeah.
ready, and I knew where they were going to get, they were supposed to go to my storage facility. And so I knew the truck was on the way. And then the company calls me and they're like, I can't drop them here. Like, we don't have the right truck. We didn't bring one of those decks that like lower. So we
Oh,
need a thing that we
no.
can back into. And I was like, but I don't have that. Like
Yeah,
I don't have just a
like a warehouse.
warehouse.
Right.
Yeah. And so they're like, well, let us call one of our customers in the area. And so what, bless her heart, the like truck dispatcher, she called a local furniture company. I'm from a small town, so people like to help each other out, but she called a local furniture company who they deal with, and they were
Yeah.
like, okay, like, yeah, we'll take them, but they need to be out by 7 o'clock tonight. It's like 11 in the morning. And I
Oh,
was like,
no.
okay. So the truck rolls up, 3 huge pallets off the back of the truck into this furniture store. And I was like, this is crazy. And I call my mom and dad crying, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like,
Yeah.
I can't move them. Like, what are we gonna do? And so my dad was working, bless my mom's heart. She's like, let's do this. So she loads up the SUV in the trailer and comes over. And for the next like 5 hours, we did like box by box
Oh,
into this
no.
trailer, drove home box by box into the garage. And we did that like 3 or 4 trips and we got it done. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I was all tears and overwhelmed. It got done and it is a funny story now. And I just think it's, again, one of those like moments burned into my memory where I'm like, again, down the road, this will be laughable. And it will be one of those things where you're like, Mom, remember when we had to move 10,000 boxes of tampons?
That's awesome. I love it. So, these stories are so priceless because honestly, like, so I've done, with this podcast, I was asked to do a public speaking event and I'm like, what am I going to talk about? And they're like, just talk about, you and Titan. And I was like, I mean, I have some crazy stories about things that I've had to overcome. They're like, those are great. And honestly, like I just this week did my 3rd speaking engagement. And those stories are what resonate. Like that is, I could give them, here's how to start a business and become a millionaire step by step. And they will listen to none of that. But that one story that I tell them about how I, nearly lost the entire business in a matter of 3 days, they're like, that story was great. And I'm like, but what about the other things?
They're like, no, we only care about those things.
Yeah.
I think it adds a really human perspective, right?
Correct.
Like I think you can look on LinkedIn and Instagram and it seems like every entrepreneur is so successful, but we've all also had those really, not every entrepreneur is successful. And I don't make any money from my company right now, just full context, but it really gives a human perspective of like, these are the highs and the lows, and it's not all fun and it's certainly not all pretty.
But it's so much like there's so much that you have to come, like grit and tenacity, and that grit and tenacity in that early hard days. This is why I always tell people, don't go and get VC funding with an idea. Don't do it, because number one, you're giving up your whole company. And number two, you don't get to learn the lessons that help you to be a great entrepreneur and make really good business decisions later on when you do have the money. So like if somebody hands a 22-year-old who has this, oh, I'm going to start the newest great dating app, and they hand them $20 million, that $20 million is going to 6 months on some stupid stuff that should never have been a thing. But the entrepreneur who's been gritty and who has like, pulled themselves up from their bootstraps, they're going to make really good choices with that $20 million later. So
you really value every penny when you're figuring it out yourself. And I've certainly learned the value of that. And it's scary at times, you can really stretch your personal finances and get yourself personally into a scary situation financially, but it's all part of it to an extent.
Part of it. Yeah. I mean, like as an entrepreneur, you do have to do things that sound like the worst business decision ever. Like I'm going to finance my business with credit cards that have 27% interest rates. And like, this is what we're doing right now, and so like, this
is hang on by your fingernails.
Yes. And we'll work it out later. That'll be my later on plan. But like right now, this is what we're doing. So we've been there, but so I am a big believer in, figure out the hard stuff early. I even tell my son that as like life lessons, I'm like, make all the mistakes before you turn 18. And so that way, because those mistakes, you have a landing pad, you have a little soft place to fall. You make those same mistakes financially, like you can go invest in Bitcoin. If you lose it all tomorrow, it's okay. You don't have to pay rent, right?
Absolutely.
So, go make crazy stock investments, go do all those things and learn what it feels like. It's kind of like getting an immunization. You get a little dose of something that if you were to get it full on, it would be much worse. So get little doses of immunization against like financial decisions and like poor life choices. Do that early because then you learn.
Absolutely. And I think we all like as young individuals before we leave high school, we should have way more financial literacy than we do. And so I think I don't have children, but I hope one day to be able to give my kid or children some financial literacy and, let them make those little choices and mistakes like you talked about, because then when you enter quote unquote the real world, you kind of have a little context. But it is so wild that like I could go to university and just get a credit card by walking past like a booth at Welcome
And
Week.
you get like a free t-shirt, and now you
Yeah.
have $1,000 limit and a 28% interest rate, and you're like, awesome. And you're like, this is not awesome. Like,
It's free. It's
so
$1,000
bad.
free dollars, right? I can just spend $1,000.
$3,000. Let's go on a cruise. Yeah,
Yeah,
like it's the
exactly.
craziest stuff. Absolutely. They should not be giving credit cards to kids who have not had
No,
to make any financial decisions yet.
no, exactly.
So let's talk about that while we're talking about finances. How do you finance 3 pallets of tampons? Like, how do you, working with a distributor, I'm sure they are going to demand, hey, we're going to put all this product into all these stores. How do you finance that?
Yeah, to date, the company has been self-funded.
Mhm.
My parents' corporation put in some money for the inventory, which I'm forever grateful for.
Sure.
I have a couple times now maxed out the line of credit that I received to do my MBA.
Yep.
I would pay it down. I would jack that right back up. I'm
Yep.
approaching the limit again. Like every day, I'm
Yeah.
getting a little bit closer.
Uh-huh.
So I've done a lot. It's not been glamorous by any means. The fall of 2021, after I had graduated school, I went back to waitressing.
Yep.
I did waitressing, all through university and bartending, and it's great money.
Mhm.
Late nights, it's not great. I still do it. I work tonight and tomorrow night at a local restaurant, but it allows income to be made in the hours that I don't have to do my own work. And so
Exactly.
I've really relied heavily on that. I also I've done a few different short-term contracts. So I worked a
Mhm.
couple of years ago for a friend's company, a consulting firm. I did some work with them. I'm in the middle of like a 3 to 6 month contract right now as well. So I try and do that for, 3 to 4 hours a day and then do my stuff. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a balancing act. And I'm in the
Mhm.
phase now of growth where once I secure 1 or 2 purchase orders, it's a lot easier to go raise money. And I've certainly now have proof of concept that the product and company can be successful. And so whether I take a loan, whether I take investor money, I'm in that decision-making period right now. But it has been such an interesting experience being in my 30s and watching my colleagues from the MBA have these jobs where they're making a lot of money
Yeah.
and I am waitressing. And that is
Yeah.
that's not the full story, but that's the comparison that I just look in the mirror sometimes and I'm like, I'm waitressing and that's an amazing profession and I love it and I love the social aspects of it. I'm not trying to put it down, but it's really hard when I sometimes sit here and compare myself to my peers and it's just like, yeah,
Mhm.
this is, it's not glamorous and it's all part of it again. But that's it to date, it's still what I'm doing.
But, and I get it, because but it's the entrepreneurial spirit. It's the feeling like you're doing something much bigger than yourself and that you're solving a problem. And that to me is priceless. And
Yeah.
and I mean, I get in that same mindset sometimes, like even as an entrepreneur, and even, I've been in my business for 9 years and I look at other entrepreneurs. I'm like, but they're doing so much better and
Right.
they have more free time. And like there's always a comparison that you're gonna make.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of you doing this and grinding it out and doing the hard work now is so that you can 10x their income in 10 years. So hopefully
Absolutely. That's the goal. Yeah.
it's all for a good cause. And you're helping women and you're doing all this really cool stuff and you're learning some really cool lessons. So that's awesome.
Yeah. But you're right. There's always comparison. Like I talk to
Yeah.
those individuals who,
Yeah.
have the consulting and finance jobs and they look at me and they're like, your life seems sweet. Like you get to do what you want. And, so we're always comparing one another
Sure.
and they might
Mhm.
not get as much fulfillment out of their job. They might have financial stability. I get a lot of fulfillment. I don't have financial stability. Right. So it's
Sure.
kind of the
Yeah.
grass is always greener and it's just
Mhm.
what we choose to focus on. But yeah, self-criticism of where you are in life can be
Ooh, it's harsh.
so
Mm,
detrimental.
it's
Yeah.
so harsh. I mean, and it doesn't even matter where you are in life. Like, even if you have all the money in the world, you're going to look at somebody who has, a family, a spouse and the kids and you're like, oh, I wish I was them. And they're looking at you like, I wish I was you, And so it doesn't
Freedom.
matter. Exactly. Like you get to go out and do what you want. Right. So yeah, it's all, it's so easy to compare your journey to somebody else's, but at the end of the day, it's your journey and it's up to
Exactly.
you what happens with it. So, well, good for you. So, tell me, I mean, we've talked a lot about the obstacles that you've had to overcome in order to get where you are, but tell me, so one of the questions that I ask on my podcast all the time is tell me about a time that you've given your power away and another
Mm.
time that you've stepped into your power.
I feel like as a female business owner,
Hmm.
I unconsciously give my power away every time I talk about my business.
Of
And
course. Hmm.
been thinking about that more recently. And it's it's our nature to be like, oh, just that little thing I'm doing. It's not
Yes.
successful yet. I'm not
Yes.
making any money from it. It's like every time I talk about the business and I'm actively trying to change this, because what is the purpose of being like, oh, but it's nothing yet. Like maybe it'll be big one day, because
Yeah.
that's not
Hmm.
true. It is something. It's 3 years of work. It's a
Hmm.
passion. It's successful to what it can be right now. And so I truly think though, and to date, it's almost every time I've talked about my business, I've given my power away a little bit and made it seem smaller, and made myself feel smaller than just stepping into being like, this is my business. And the flip side of that is, this, it's kind of silly, but it was a big deal to me. And so this week, so 2 weeks ago, I got these, I did a photo shoot, right? So
Yeah.
I had got some headshots done. It was really fun, and some holding the product, whatever. And I haven't been really I haven't really promoted my own business on my own social media until recently. And so on my story on like Monday night, I put one of the new photos of me holding the product smiling. And I kind of made a joke. I was like, so happy to be a broke founder, LOL. I realized it's the first time I've used the word founder in like a public platform other than just like on my badge for the trade show. And just I feel like using that word on a social platform with, it's not like I have a bunch of followers. I've less than 2,000, but that felt powerful to me. And it's like,
Yeah.
I am a founder. At the end of the day, I have started this company. I have got it onto retail shelves, and that's pretty
Hmm.
cool. And so let's celebrate that. And yes, I did it in the form of a joke because that's what I find fulfilling. And but I use that word and I really stepped into it. And the amount of people I had responding, being like, I had no idea you started a company. This is amazing. Tell me
Yeah.
about it. My business Instagram grew by 100 people. And so it's owning that and seeing the excitement of people in your network being like, yeah, own it. Like, this is great. You're doing
Yes.
great.
Yes, yes. Well, and just let me tell you, because this is another soapbox that I'm gonna jump on real quick. But I see this all the time with women. We're constantly giving our power away, downplaying our accomplishments, and actually with this security conference, and there's a good friend of mine, and I adore her, and I think she walks on water. And like to me, she is just like the epitome of this accomplished woman. She was with the CIA, fairly prominent
Cool.
organization. Really smart individual. She retired from there, and now she's a very top level executive at another very large government agency. And we were talking at at this event last week, and she introduced herself. She's like, yeah, and she like totally like downplayed who she was. And I looked at her, and I looked at the guy she was saying this to, and I was like, do not believe a word she says. She is a badass who is like, and I just went right down her resume, and the guy's like, wow, I had no idea. And I'm like, and she's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, no, not like, own it. Like, you are a badass. You know what it takes to get where you are. And so, but
Absolutely.
yeah, I think we do that all the time. And as women, we just downplay our accomplishments. And I even catch myself doing it. And I talk about
Mhm.
not doing it. And I catch myself doing it. Like, people would come up to me and say, oh my God, it's so cool what you're doing with Titan. You're growing it. This is so great. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it takes a lot of work. Like, it takes so many sleepless nights and so much grit and so much tenacity. And then to downplay it is not fair to us, and what we have done to get there. So yes, good for you.
It's so interesting. It's like, I was thinking about it today, and it's almost like this discomfort of just letting something sit in the air without being like, but it's not a big deal. It's like if
Right.
somebody, even when I think females and maybe people in general receive a compliment, it's
Yeah.
like I love your shoes. Oh, I got them on sale. It's like,
Right, right,
okay,
right.
like
We immediately.
yeah, it's just like, okay, yeah, you love my shoes. Thank you. I love them too.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that. And if someone's like, wow, it's amazing what you started, instead of just letting that sit and be as it is, we have to somehow downplay it. And it's
Yeah.
just like, why can't we just let it sit there and be like, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And just
Yeah.
be like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's a training process almost. It's like
Yeah.
like we have to like decommission that part of our being just to be like, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Exactly. And I do that even now in my personal life. Like when so I had bought myself a nice little Porsche for my little reward for all my
Ooh,
hard
love
work.
that.
After 5 years
Good for
after starting my
you.
company, after driving a mom car hoopty for a long time. And somebody actually this week said, they said, "Oh, I love the Porsche thing." And like I immediate reaction was, "Oh, it's okay." But I was like, "Yeah, me too." So
As you should own that
so
100%.
yeah, so it's like you have to start owning that it is difficult though, because we immediately want to downplay our accomplishments, and that's one of the hardest things that we have to do is step into that power, into that ownership. We had I went to there was like this top 100 fastest growing companies thing, and we were in the top 100 fastest growing companies, which is really
Amazing.
exciting. But the guys who were up there on like the number three, there were the top three companies up at the front, they got to be honored, and we were like 15, so we weren't up on the stage, but I thought
Still
that was still pretty
amazing.
cool, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm listening to these guys, and it's all male-led companies, which is great. It doesn't bother me, but he was up there, and as he's talking about his company, it comes out that he's pre-revenue. And I'm like, how are you the fastest growing company if you don't even have any money? Like there's no money. And so it's come that like, it's just like, how did you get, I don't understand. I have busted my ass all this time.
Like
And
what's happening
I
here?
know. How are you up in the top three pre-revenue? And it's like one of those things where, listen, we've all been at that pre-revenue stage, but it does sound better when you say I'm a pre-revenue entrepreneur versus a broke entrepreneur, because, at the same time, you can just say pre-revenue
100%.
and, it sounds like you're in the VC world, and that's how they get
I'm
away
gonna
with
start
it.
using that. That sounds way better.
Pre-revenue. So yeah, so I've now switched into, we're just pre-revenue this month. That's it. We're not behind. We're not in the
I
red.
love that so
Revenue.
much. See, confidence though,
I
that sounds
know.
so
Well, he
different
was
than
up
being
there
like,
with
I'm
like
broke.
all the confidence in the world talking about how they're pre-revenue. And I was like, wow, that takes a lot of guts, man, I tell you.
I
But
love it. We can all learn from that, I
we
think.
can. We can. Some of these,
Absolutely.
there's no shortage of audacity in the world. So we can do whatever we want. And apparently it's okay. So
I love it.
so tell me, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Oh, I would say that it's all going to be okay and you have so
Mm,
many years to figure it out.
yeah.
I always describe my 20s as tumultuous, like hectic.
Yeah.
There's so much going on. And I mean, I didn't go to university till I was 21. So I
Mhm.
kind of consider almost my 18-year-old self my 21-year-old self because most people
Sure.
start school then. But you're figuring out so much and there's so much unknown and you feel like you should be figuring it out because you're quote unquote an adult all of a sudden. Um, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. And every time I think through my 20s, I feel like I never completed something and that really bothered me. I feel like I would start something and then lose interest and start something and lose interest and have a new idea
Mm,
and then not see it through. And I would say that's okay. Try
yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
make mistakes, like you said, and I would beat myself up less about why haven't I figured it out? Why don't I have a job like my friends? All of that. Um,
Hmm.
because we find our paths all at different times. And I spent so much of my 20s being like, oh, like I'm not making enough money. I don't have a good enough job. I'm not where I should be, whatever that even means.
Yeah.
And so I would just tell myself to like enjoy it more than be critical of myself because I didn't enjoy my 20s that much.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely understand that. You think it has anything to do with the fact that you were an exceptional athlete? You just tend to beat yourself up more. You have higher expectations of yourself.
I think so. Like certainly that transition out of competitive
Hmm.
sport to school. I
Yeah.
dropped out of my first university. I started school, like I kind of stopped skiing, obviously the end of that winter, and then I started school the next September. And I
Hmm.
dropped out 6 months later. I wasn't ready to go to school. That transition was really hard. And then I took another year off, and then I started school. And I think there's certainly an inherent like I want to be good at everything,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm used to, and I'm used to performing at like a pretty high level. And it took a while for me to kind of like calm down out of that. But I
Yeah.
certainly I wanted that same feeling from a career, and I wasn't getting it in my 20s. And that, I think, really, it's like I was just beating myself up that I hadn't found it yet. Which isn't nice. Like we should be nicer to ourselves in
I
general and
know. I
cut ourselves
know.
a little slack and give ourselves grace and all of those things. But
Mm,
when you're in it, you don't see that, right? Like
you
when now
don't.
I'm 34 and I can look back and be like, oh, like I hold space in my heart for that
Yeah.
25-year-old girl who was really lost. But when you're 25 and you're just like, oh, like this isn't working, you can't see outside of that. But
Mm-mm.
I would certainly look back and be like, it's all good. And you don't have to be a high performing athlete every day of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and when you're in that mindset of like domination, you know what I mean? Like you can dominate in a sport, you expect to be able to do that same thing in every aspect of life. And it's not that easy. And I think that's why a lot of athletes, they'll get out of, their competitive sports and they'll coach because then they can put that same passion into something that they know they're already good at, because starting
Absolutely.
something that is new that you're not good at is a different feeling, and it's not a nice feeling, when you've been so used to being really good at something. So I can
And like
imagine that's a hard
leaving that,
transition.
yeah, and you kind of leave your safe bubble that you've known
Yeah.
forever, right? And then you're like, and I think
Hmm.
that's why I dropped out of my first university. I was kind of like, I don't feel like I fit in here. And
Yeah.
it's like, of course I don't feel that way because I've lived in one world forever. Now I'm trying to
Yeah.
move way over here. And it took time. And, I'm glad I dropped out of that school because it led me to my other school. And I'm so happy that I went there. But
Yeah.
I was so critical of myself at that time because I was like, oh, you can't even like commit to this. Like first you
Yeah.
quit skiing, now you quit school. What are you going to quit next? And that
Yeah.
kind of played in my mind for a lot of years.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. So this has been such a fun conversation. I am really, really excited about everything that you're doing. So what's next for you?
What's next, I think, is, I have two big retailers that I'm kind of in the process with now. That'll be, if I can get those finished before 2024, I will be so happy. And so that's
Yeah.
kind of front of radar right now. And then raising money, which is cool. It's an exciting
Yeah.
time for the business, and putting together that investor deck and seeing who bites. It feels like a good time to do that. And so I guess growth of the company is next for me, but particularly kind of those two big retailers. And then finally, maybe getting some money in that bank account.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Well, good for you. Well, I am cheering you on from here.
Thank you.
I think you're doing exceptional things, and you're definitely the person to take this to the finish line. So, I think
Thank
you
you.
have every bit of the grit and tenacity and everything that you need to get there. So, congratulations on your success so far and what you will be accomplishing, no doubt, very soon.
Thank you. It's been a really, really nice chatting with you, and congrats on all of your success. It's
Thank
amazing what
you.
you're doing as well.
I appreciate that. So, Jillian, one more thing that I wanted to ask is, what do you wish more people knew?
I wish that more people knew the importance of recognizing all sorts of different power. I
Mm,
think when we think of power, it's kind of either high leadership or the loud voice or something like that. But power comes in all sorts of different forms. And, I've worked as an executive assistant, I've worked as a coordinator, kind of these lower level jobs that
yeah.
don't always get looked at as holding a lot of power, but
Hmm.
being able to recognize people where they are and for the power that they bring to an organization or a family or whatever it is so important. And I think it really inspires people to for a more inclusive environment,
Yeah.
where people can kind of step into their own power. And so as we all grow into different leadership positions, just remembering to recognize everybody along the way.
That is amazing. I love that.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you again. And how can people find you?
My business social media is at reign.wellness, REIGN.wellness. My website is www.myreignwellness.com. And please go check out the products. I'd love that. And they'll be available in the US soon.
Hopefully soon. I definitely plan to check it out as soon as it comes. So you'll have to let me know when that happens, and I will be your first
Absolutely.
customer in the US. So,
Perfect.
well, thank you so much. I have really, really enjoyed our conversation, and I am looking forward to seeing what else you've got going on and all the other things that you achieve. So
Thank you
much
so much.
success.
It's been a great chat with you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. And everybody, you can